Alright, so there's another Last of Us video. And I kind of want to take it into the Telltale what if game. Because the way those games are made, like the Last of Us games, they could have been made like those, choice games. Especially, I think a best example for Telltale, or no, not Telltale, for The Last of Us could probably be made into something like, Detroit Becoming Human. Most definitely. And I was just thought about this, right? So I want to kind of give certain scenarios that kind of stick out to me, and, part one leading up into part two, and how things would have definitely been if certain characters were still alive, and if certain things, didn't happen, if we had the capability or the decision, to definitely choose what happens to in the game. So I believe so let's go with part one, right? So in the beginning, Joel daughter is still around, still alive, right? We're leaving the house. Everything in the house, her father coming in, stopping the neighbor, still happens. They meet up with Tommy. That still happens. They're on the road, right? The vehicle eventually gets stuck and everyone is running. That still occurs. I want that to still most definitely occur. You have the decision right then and there to either have Tommy help you guys get through with the gun, or have the decision to take the gun and have Tommy take Joel's daughter. I would go with the decision, have Joel take the gun, have Tommy take Joel's daughter. Joel is definitely, a bit more built, bigger, I think more equipped than Tommy is when it comes to combat. I think they would have gotten through a much more smoothly if they chose to go that route, if that was the case, right? When they got to the guard, right, Tommy would have been at a standoff with the M16 pointed at him, along with Joel's daughter, because Joel decided to take the gun, right? We have the capability choice to step in, stop it, shoot the guard, or not do anything, which, would still lead to his daughter dying if we chose not to do anything. I think Joel would have shot the guard and made sure nothing, no stray bullet came out of that gun. Came out of the machine gun, pretty much. Which would have led to, to Joel's daughter to still be alive. And for them just to keep going. Now, Joel's daughter would definitely be, most definitely, probably, oh geez. I don't know how old his daughter was, but she was in her teens, so there's a good chance she could have been, maybe in her late 20s or really early 30s at the most. So we definitely would have had her grown up. I think Joel would have been, more level-minded. I feel like he still would have met Marsha. I feel like, Joel would have had more successful runs if his daughter was still alive as well. I feel like if that was the case, then he wouldn't have had a bad falling out between Fireflies at all. So I feel like we wouldn't have gotten the Fireflies as a enemy. No, most certainly not. When it came to the mission to collect the cargo, I feel like that would have happened, so we still would have met Illy. And they would want to know, what's up with Illy, why she's so important to deliver to a group of Fireflies in a whole nother state that will take a full year to get to. So I think that Joel's daughter, because she's a girl, she would have had a better, she would have communicated, I think, better with Illy, and Joel, again, would probably been more, really more, again, level-minded and calm about talking to Illy. And I think because of this, with also having, Marsha there as well, Illy would have said, I'm hope for a cure. Like, what do you mean? And I feel like she would have showed them her bite. And I think rather than jump into conclusion, like, how old is this bite? Because it's been 20 years, they know what bites look like, and they would have saw, okay, this bite's old. Like, this is an old bite, but you haven't turned. So they would have took, heavy precautions to really protect Illy. I have a feeling that, Joel's daughter and Illy would have definitely connected and became good friends, which then bring us to the guards. It's like, look, okay, we got to figure out a way to get her out of here. I feel like, we would have got the choice to go in the daytime, or most definitely at nighttime. And I feel like they would have had a better chance of definitely slipping through everyone during the daytime, because at nighttime there's a lot more security. So I think they would have had a better chance during the daytime, and that they wouldn't have risked running into the guards and getting into a shootout. No. From there could be a chance that we had some rogue Fireflies, which means we were sent the bad group of Fireflies, right? And because of this people are so, well armed that they're still on the mission to find Illy. They want Illy to be brought towards, the hospital, who had bad agendas of their own, like we found out, So, because of that, I feel like we definitely would have gotten our taste of, still fighting the Fireflies, but have it be like a bad group that was just sent out. Now, I think one part that definitely stands is Marsha's death. Like, we had the multiple choice if they chose to switch us to play as her of some sort. We could have chose to stay, which will end up just dying, or choose to escape with Joel, Joel's daughter and Ellie, right? I feel like we would have gotten that. I feel like we would have. Would have escaped, which means when it came to running into those two boys in the city, I think the decision would have been made by Joel's daughter, Marcia, to give us the choice. When we talk to Ellie and Joel, like, they might be danger to us. However, I do believe they would have been a big help in some way, so I feel like we still would have rolled with them. I feel like there would have been another chance of some sort. Like, okay, rather than going through here, let's find a different way around, because we got a bad feeling about this building, so let's not go through there. So they would have went around, which means the little boy would have still be alive, and the big brother wouldn't have lost his mind, right? So because of this, when we got to, I think a part that sticks out to me is when Joel gets hurt in the game because he's out during the winter time. Well, no, we got to kind of not jump too far, but we're getting towards the fall, right? And what's a part that sticks out to me right there is when they go into Jackson and they find Tommy. I feel like we still would have ran into Tommy. And I feel like we would have gotten everything the same with the invasion of the power plant in Jackson a little bit. But I feel like it would have been with a group that may have worked for the Fireflies. And then we could have had it now. A lot of people, the two boys, Marcia, Joel's daughter, Ellie, and Joel. I do believe, again, we would have made it, those characters would have made it through the shootout. It was a little invasion. It wasn't nothing too crazy. I feel like they would have gave us the decision to capture one of the people alive to question them. And that, I feel like if that was the case, we could have gotten definitely early, or at least a decision to have Tommy, if we could convince him, okay, look, we know this group, let's take the rest of them out, we know where they are, get some supplies and take them out. So I feel like we would have had Tommy earlier with us in part one, if that was it. So now we would have a good batch of people on our team that would have made this so much easier. So, because some time has passed, Joel's daughter is, of course, has experience with defending herself, taking somebody out if she needs to. Marcia, Joel, Ellie would have helped as well. The older brother, of course, going to have experience because he's going to want to make sure his little brother's alive. And I think the decision would have been made to say, okay, Tommy, can you keep, Ellie and the boy here while the rest of us leave? And I feel like Tommy's wife would have watched them, and Joe would have kept his word, like, I'm going to be back. Now, here's a bit of the tricky part. Most definitely right here, because we're getting to the hotel part where, actually, no. I feel like there might be a choice, maybe a decision where the older brother gets killed or gets injured, right? I think it would be interesting if there was some type of choice decision where the older brother got killed. So we're going to kill off the older brother. When we got back to the power plant, we would have had to talk to the little boy, right? And figure out what his decision would be. And I feel like the little boy, yes, would be lost. And there's a good chance that, he may not want to roll with Joel again, and there's a chance he might still want to, because them are the only people that they know for at least a good little while that he's, comfortable with. So I think if we played as the little boy, I think the choice would have been for him to stay at Jackson, which would have been better because he still would be alive, which means he could come back into play definitely in part 2, right? So we get everything done. The boy stays in Jackson. Tommy's gonna look after him. Joel's daughter, Marcia, and Ellie, they leave. And then we get Joel that gets hurt. I forget how he gets hurt. I think a pipe or something. He gets shot through the stomach, I think. An arrow. So that part, still happens. And we get the winter time, and I think we play as Joel's daughter rather than Ellie. We still get the hunters, the cannibals. I feel like everything would definitely would have been the same, but maybe even a bit different. I feel like we would have got a choice because we only were 2 people in the game. So, because of this, we would have asked a question and maybe we would have got something that just didn't sound right. So I can see the choice of taking out those 2 men and then escaping, which I feel like probably would have had consequences a bit later on in the game, especially during the mall scene. And I'll get to that eventually. So we would have gotten that. We would have gotten Joel the medicine that he needs, which brings us into the summertime. They're all, walking and everything, and eventually they get to the hospital, right? We meet the Fireflies, And in this case, I think the Fireflies should be an undercover bad guy group. I feel like we would have got the hospital scene. But here's the thing. I feel like maybe with them not being bad guys, because some of them may not know about, their group like that, being bad or doing bad things, because we don't know who the main leader is of the Fireflies. Which then brings me to this. I think, with Joel's daughter and Marsha, I think they would have came to an agreement and talked to the doctor and some of the nurses, like, I want to wait for Ellie to wake up, and we would like all of us to talk to her to see what her decision is. I think when that happened, I think Ellie would wake up, and I think we would have had a decision to say yes or no to something. And I feel like we would have said yes. So that means, Abby's father would still be alive. A lot of the Fireflies would still be alive. We would have, after surgery, I feel like we all would have walked out of there, okay, happy. Ellie would still be alive. They would have went back to Jackson, right? They would have went back definitely to Jackson. Now, in the Last of Us Left Behind DLC, I feel like really, rather than fighting the clickers, we definitely would have had a stronger choice to have Ellie's girlfriend alive. And I feel like we all would have chose the decision to have her girlfriend still be part of the Fireflies in some source of it. And have Ellie still, get bit without telling her friend. Which means her girlfriend would definitely play a role in part 2, which then brings me to part 2, of this. With it now being 24 years, right? We would have gotten some news about the Fireflies falling due to a renegade group, which would have been the cannibals. I think there would have been traitors within the Fireflies after word broke out that the cure just didn't work. And I think the truth would have got out that there were a lot more people like Illy who just didn't make it through, and that their sacrifice or surgery in the end just didn't mean nothing. I believe we would have got the wolves, but it would have been different. It would have been fallen Fireflies who would join the cannibalistic group after certain news and word spread it out like wildfire about the fall of them, how they failed, and maybe some ugly things, would have came out even more. Because I believe we would have gotten a run through dialogue with Illy and Joel at the most. Definitely talking. When we get back, Joel's daughter could be around 30 something. 34 at this time. The little boy would have definitely have grown up a bit. Ellie's girlfriend would have grew up a bit. I believe Joel and Marsha would have been married. I do believe that Joel's daughter would have met somebody and had a child. As well. Which means the white girlfriend would have never hooked up with Ellie. She still would have been pregnant and still would have been that China guy. Or Korean, whatever he is. When we all got back to Jackson. And I do believe we would have played as the optional group who would be considered the wolves, but they would have been completely different than what we got in part 2, going from what I just said. They would have been close to Jackson. They would have been close to Jackson. I feel like we would have made the choice to either wait till somebody sends out a party of scavengers or invade them. I think it would have been interesting because people probably would have chose the invasion, which means we would play as the optional group for a little bit during the invasion of Jackson. Caught a lot of people off guard. And I think when it was all said and done, we would have switched back to a survival group and we would get their points of view in a flashback scene. To figure, again, with choices, with how it would affect us later on. So, we would have played as Joel's daughter. I think Joel's daughter would lose her child, maybe even her lover. Stumbling upon it would have drove her crazy, she would have went on a killing spree. Her father would have jumped in to save her. I do believe Illy would have sacrificed herself if we had a decision to save her girlfriend, which, yes, we would be killing Illy off. So her girlfriend would take a turn for the worst as well. The little boy would have got out. Marsha would have got out. Joel would have got out. Tommy would have got out. They all would meet each other. And I think the decision would be, after everything settles down, to go back and try to find survivors or just keep going. I think people would want to go back and try to find survivors because you never know. I feel like we would have stumbled onto corpses of Illy, Joel's daughter's child, and her lover as well. I believe that they would have turned to some sort as one of the infected early stages, and I think it would have been an emotional scene. Definitely for our characters, and make the decision just to let them roam or put them down. I think a lot of people would choose to put them down because you wouldn't want to have somebody you knew who you loved live like that. I know I wouldn't. They would have gathered up supplies, and I think our group definitely would have turned pretty dark. There's no doubt about that. Even in trying to make this game into a multiple choice game, I know the decision definitely would have been made through dialogue that we couldn't control to go out there and hunt down the wolves. I feel like as we stumbled upon our group, we would have ran into Abby and her father. And I do strongly believe that our group would have had the decision if, okay, do we let them join or do we kill them? I think a lot of people would have made the decision to kill them, which would have drove our group down more towards a darker path. I do strongly believe that we would run into the scars, and the scars would think that we were with the wolves. And I believe if we would have made the choice, like, look, to capture one of them or to get captured, we could have said, no, we're not with the wolves. We were from Jackson when the wolves attacked. Maybe you heard about that community falling. And I believe the word would have got out eventually. And like, okay, well, what's your deal? Because they would have took our survivors if we had the choice to surrender to the main leader of the scars. And I believe we could negotiate to where, okay, let us team up with you, because we're also after the wolves with what they did. And I believe they would have shared their story. I'm like, you know what? We're going to let you guys join. After we all get what we want, you guys are free to go. I believe in secret behind dialogue. We would have had another plan to take out the scars as well. Like, they can't be trusted. What about the boy, right, that we run into? I think it would have been too far gone for him. I think, once we would have took out the wolves and also taken out some scars in a big battle, we would have eventually killed the boy. And I believe a lot more other people, would die as well. Because there would be clickers, infected involved, that would have heard those sounds and would have also invaded the base from where we were. Because a lot of it throughout the game, would be us searching for this group along with the scars, right? So not too many big decisions. And I think between the last part, we would have gotten the leader who created the wolves fighting the leader of the scars. And I think we could have made the decision to, just walk away or take them both out. I think people would chose to take them both out, which would have led us to an oversee of a cutscene of some sort of the battle just burning underneath our feet, people dying, which would have given us, our characters who I think at this time would have been villainous in their own way, like Joel, his daughter, Marcia, Tommy, and Ellie's girlfriend. They all would have gathered at the house that we saw in the end. That was our main screen display in part 1. And I believe Joel would have stabbed a knife into the windowsill. And I believe we would have got a couple of seconds, a minute of everyone's face just focused and some dialogue going through their mind. And I believe we would have got an Easter egg of them saying no way out or too far gone, that are representation, dialogue, and titles of The Walking Dead. And I think the camera would have zoomed out at that point of our group outside of the house while they were still inside. And definitely go to the credits. And to me, I think that's how things would be if they were, choice games, like Walking Dead games, or like the, Detroit Becoming Human. And of course, there could be other, scenarios, most definitely, but I wanted to try to focus on what I think people would choose, and all this is off the top of my head, by the way. None of this is scripted. You can even call this, rather than being multiple choice, a rewrite of, what if, things were to happen differently. And I tried to focus on as much as I can remember and, recall in the game. I can't recall too much, but I think that would have been interesting, which would have left a question, would there have been a DLC? Yeah, most definitely. I think the DLC would be definitely the point of view of the people that we lost in the fight at Jackson. Their final moments and things going through their head. And I think that would have hit very, very heavily as well. Ellie's, the lover of Joel's daughter, and even Tommy's wife. Even seeing the brutality of those who didn't want to fight back, seeing them get slaughtered, seeing those who did choose to fight back, how they got slaughtered, and having it be the I guess the motive of the DLC to the what if, having them trying to make decisions that would affected them in their death, and have it be them trying to find their loved one so they can get out together, but it didn't happen, and they didn't have it where they would have seen their loved ones, just they would have been dead already, drawing their last breath. I feel like that would have definitely been the case of the DLC. Nothing really too much else to say. So with that being said, man, I'm out. Peace.